If you worked in a shipping industry, you don't plan a port for like 10 years. You plan a port for 50 years.
Yep.
If you need to plan a spaceport, which is a very unique infrastructure, you plan a port for about 100 years. Everything sort of happens from America. We need to be prepared on this side of the world, which just makes sense. Western Australia is beautifully positioned for this. The technical nuance is so important. You can't just go like, oh yeah, there's a bug in the software, we shall fix it in the next version. Once it's up there, it's space junk. You can't wing it. You can think about 1,000 risk items. None of the 1,000 will go off, except for the things that you didn't think about. How do you innovate from that? The only way is to learn from failures.
Yes.
Ram, what business are you in? I say I'm in the business of possibilities.
I love that.
Yeah. One company, one country, and one area where you can go to space and come back from space from here.
Tell me how that's possible.
All right. So we have...
Space Angel respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which we operate. We honour their enduring connection to country, waters, land, space and community, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We recognise the rich cultural heritage, knowledge and traditions of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and are committed to fostering meaningful partnerships that celebrate and preserve their contributions to Australia's story. We would also like to thank the WA Museum, Bullabardip, for allowing us the opportunity to record this podcast in their To the Moon exhibit.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about the exploration of space, starting back at the space race, which, you know, everybody knows what that is in some form or another. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about what the space race was.
The era of space exploration took off during the Cold War, primarily fueled by the intense rivalry between the US and the Soviet Union. So in 1957, if I'm not mistaken, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, which is the first artificial satellite to orbit Earth, marking exactly the start of the space race, right? So this achievement shocked the world and spurred the US to accelerate its space efforts, right? Leading to the establishment of NASA in 1958. So one of the most significant milestones was the landing of the Apollo 11 on the moon in 1969, with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin becoming the first humans to walk on its surface. So this event signified both a technological achievement as well as a symbol of political power, right? So that's essentially, the context of, what was really then the space sector at that stage.
Since 1969 and the moon landing, there have been there's been other exploration missions to space and what have you, but we haven't gone back to the moon. Why do you reckon that is?
Yeah, look, several reasons, and they're all quite obvious ones as well. After the US landed on the moon, interest in human space exploration began to wane, primarily due to the shifting political priorities, the high cost involved in these missions, and lack of immediate scientific or economic returns at that stage. Right?
So basically there wasn't a lot to gain from going back there, is that?
Yeah, at that stage, right?
Yep.
So NASA shifted its focus to other projects, right? Including the development of space stations, the deep space probes, the space shuttle program, and a whole range of things. So the Apollo missions ended up with Apollo 17 in 1972. And then since then, no humans have returned back to the moon.
How is modern technology pushing the boundaries in terms of space exploration at this point?
In the past few decades, the focus of space exploration has diversified, right? Such as things like Mars exploration, satellite deployments, all various types of satellites. I think we touched on some. Communications is what we are familiar with now, more Earth observation type satellites. And layering to the low Earth orbit is very much what the new space sector that we are focused on. Traditionally, we focused on geosynchronous type satellites. The International Space Station has taken a lot of center stage. It's going to be decommissioned by 2031, the current one. So we need more up there.
Yeah.
So that's why what I mean by taking center stage. With the emergence of the private companies, obviously, SpaceX, Blue Origin, I would say they're foundational companies for the new space era, and now a whole heap of not only companies but agencies around the world as well has sprung up from a lot of the small countries as well as the medium size and the larger ones traditionally as well, which is sort of pushing the boundaries. The fundamental common denominator between all of these is the commercialization of space.
Yes.
So though the political aspects are there, but the commercial aspects has become more forefront, which opens up the doors for a lot of possibilities.
Yep.
I think one of the people asked me, Ram, what business are you in? I say, I'm in the business of possibilities.
I love that.
Yeah. But the other thing about the space sector is that the technical nuance is so important that you can't just go like, oh yeah, there's a bug in the software, we shall fix it in the next version. Sorry, they're not going to be a next version. Once it's up there, it's space junk.
Yes.
So your disciplines needs to be so good that you can't wing it.
Yep.
I love that about the space sector. I love that because you need to be good at what you do. You can't wing it. It's not a great marketing tool where you go like, SaaS platform this and SaaS platform that. No, it needs to work.
Yep.
Right? For the disciplines for it to work is amazing. In terms of the capabilities that you're going to enable, and I'm talking about things like the robotic missions to Mars that we're talking about, the plans for the lunar bases, the space tourism. Can you imagine the level of the safety requirements, the diligence in the technology, the attention to detail that needs to go behind all these things? I would say one of my colleagues, young fellow who's working with us from UWA, he's part of the UW Aerospace Club, and he just launched his rocket 2 weeks ago. They're doing some work with us. We're doing some work with them in terms of scientific studies and so on. Not very high, probably about 3 kilometers. But still, like, there's a lot of learnings from that. Then I asked him, so how did it go? And he said, look, I think if we use the new motor, we would have failed tremendously. So good that we used the old motor. And then some of the sort of electronics that they thought that it would work a certain way, it didn't work. Then I said, okay, that's good. What we need to do is write a report. So what do you think? What's the gauge? Like, is it 70% good, 30% done, or 50-50? Like, where are you? And he said 70% good, 30% not good. That's good.
Yeah.
I think that's the mindset that we need to have. Because if you look at Starship, how they are doing things, it's iterative. They learn from the failures. They keep learning from the failures. I remember watching one of Elon Musk's podcasts not too long ago, and he said, you can think about, in rocket science, and that's why they call it rocket science, you can think about 1,000 risk items that things can go wrong. None of the 1,000 will go off, except for the things that you didn't think about.
Murphy's Law. Yeah.
So how do you innovate from that? The only way is to learn from failures.
Yes.
You need to have that mindset. It's stressful. It's highly stressful. I think I've heard a lot of horror stories of how the likes of SpaceX and Blue Origin and all these companies are sort of trying to enable these things. But the beauty of that as well is the mindset to how we approach things as human beings in terms of advancements, in terms of having that constructive criticisms about each other's work. You have to.
Yeah.
You have to call it out. Like, can you imagine a $1 billion mission or let's say even $1 million mission, and then I know that you're doing something wrong, I feel something is not going to go right, I have to call it out on Earth.
Absolutely.
I can't wait till the last moment to
Yes.
think, oh, and I know you're my friend, but you can't do that. So it forces people to be honest with each other.
Yeah.
Where space exploration is today, I think I don't have to tell. There's a lot of activities happening in space. I think the more people doubt about, hey, can we actually make it to Mars? It's now becoming more of a reality. I think the moon missions will happen. It's already happening. So I think these are the things that are going to take. It will happen within our lifetime. So it's important for us to be part of the journey.
So of all of these things that are currently happening or are going to happen in space, how do those things align with Space Angel?
I'll talk a little bit on the milestones for humanity, and then bring it back to the context of Space Angel. So the next major milestones are centered around human missions beyond the low Earth orbit, right? Specifically returning from the moon, eventually reaching Mars, and then the NASA Artemis program as well, which plans to land the first woman and the next man on the moon by 2025. The sustainable lunar presence by 2030s. And meanwhile, SpaceX's ambitious Starship project designed to make humans travel to Mars possible. Now, if you look at the location, everything sort of happens from America, which is really much the other side of the world. We need to be prepared on this side of the world, which just makes sense.
Yep.
So where else better than a place like Australia, which is a friendly nation, a partner nation with the US in regards to what we are doing. We are much more closer now with the announcement of the AUKUS program of work that's coming out.
Yep.
So it just makes that natural marriage in terms of what we need to do. For Space Angel, how this is important. Now, what we are providing our US counterparts or even European counterparts in the first instance is to work with one company, one state, one country, and one area where you can go or come back, go to space and come back from space from here.
Tell me how that's possible.
So we have two locations that we are working on at the moment.
Yep.
One location is very much down south near Eucla. We are calling that the Australian Space Super Corridor, which has tremendous vast amounts of land where we could sort of expand to, any type of space missions. Even if we wanted to land the Starship from America to sort of land here, we could, which is a returns activity. However, we also have another location up north in Christmas Island, which is very much well positioned close to the equator for equatorial type activity. So these are the two locations that we are working on. So that's what I mean by one-stop shop for you to go and
Southern point, northern point.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And not many countries can provide that.
Yeah.
Sort of. Western Australia is beautifully positioned for this.
Yeah.
We have the northern side and we have the southern side, and this is the only state which is pretty much 1/3 of Australia, which has that capacity and capability to do that. Now, we are geographically well positioned for space anyway, already. We have a lot of those capabilities, like ground stations and so on, as I mentioned before. So it just makes sense to sort of, leverage that. Now, the question here is who, what, when, essentially. And, how can we enable this? And it's a continuous iteration in terms of it's not an answer, that we can just say, this is exactly how we're going to build. The way we are approaching it is sort of building it modularized, instead of sort of build the whole thing and then the famous saying goes, build and they will come.
Yes.
Yeah. Going through my entrepreneurial experience, no, I don't think that's what we're going to do. I think, we want to see returns on investment. So I think in terms of Space Angel, what we think or what we are pushing for is that if you worked in a shipping industry, for example, which we have, you don't plan a port for like 10 years. You plan a port for 50 years.
Yep.
So can you imagine if you need to plan a spaceport, which is a very unique infrastructure, you don't plan a port for like 50 years.
Yeah.
You plan a port for about 100 years, right? Because it's
Makes
so
sense.
unique.
Yeah.
So you don't get up and, you can build, maybe you can say, I can get up and build an airport somewhere. Yeah, okay, fair enough. I give you that. More of a landing strip. We have a lot of landing strips in WA.
Yep.
Okay? But spaceport, how many spaceports can you build? So that's how we are approaching it, that it's a legacy piece. It needs to have a lot of that sort of nuance, context in regards to the growth. But the growth is not immediately there. It will come.
Yep.
If I just said the Mars vision feels much more closer now than it ever did.
Yes.
Well, if we're going to Mars, then we can go to Moon, we can go to, orbit and come back, which is what Blue Origin's trying to do, and Virgin and all this. So it's all there. Like I would call it in entrepreneurial or startup world, the MVP, the minimum viable products. Or they're not. Falcon 9s and all. They are no longer MVPs. They are like proper workhorses, right?
Yes.
So, but these products are there. It's going to happen. It's just a question of when, how, who, and where. And before people are just imagining, the potential, we need to start work now.
Yes. Yeah.
To grab the potential.
Yep.
So that's how we see it in regards to Space Angel's vision.
Fantastic. We're going to get into the Australian aspect of it in our next episode. But if you want to know more about Space Angel, head to the website, spaceangel.io. You can also email Ram if you want more information, theforce@spaceangel.io.